It's 1943, and 50 Mitsubishi Zeros cut through the Pacific skies. After 2 years of dominating these airways, their pilots feel overconfident. The American planes will surely flee any second, but they don't. Instead, they're rising to challenge them. The battle erupts. The Zeros strike first. Tracer bullets pound into enemy bodies. The Japanese aviators anticipate the usual explosions of rival aircraft. Yet their 20mm guns, which typically rip apart American fighters, appear to glance off the surfaces. Heavy protection should mean sluggish movement, they think. So outmaneuvering them will be simple. Taken once more, these intruders surge into a sharp ascent, their 2,000 horsepower motors thundering at maximum power. The impossible unfolds. These armored warriors climb quicker than the nimble Zeros can pursue. The Americans retaliate. Each plane's 6.50 caliber machine guns pour out devastation, shredding Zero groups like fragile sheets. The Grumman F6F Hellcat joins the Pacific struggle, turning it into a fair contest. America's foe. The early 1940s, while German dive bombers screamed above London and Japanese planes leveled Chinese towns, United States leaders dreaded these sky hunters reaching their homeland. Back then, the United States Navy's leading carrier fighter was the Brewster F-2A Buffalo, reaching 321 miles per hour with 12.7mm guns. This initial single-wing design packed force, but it would falter against Axis rivals. That clash came on December 7, 1941. Bomb doors released, blasts ravaged ships and runways without mercy. In under 2 hours, warships burned. The United States Air Armada was wrecked, and more than 2,000 American souls perished. Marked the initial full assault from Japan's air might. The swift Mitsubishi A6M Zero, among Japan's latest top fighters, pierced American barriers effortlessly. Early in the conflict, it claimed a 12-to-1 win rate, crowning itself the Pacific's supreme hunter. The Zero didn't merely surpass American planes, it crushed them. Rumors spread that even Hitler's Air Force lacked a match for it. Still, America had to dispatch its flyers against them and hope for survival. Mere hours after Pearl Harbor, the Zero struck again, now over the Philippines. Though built for carriers, the A6M Zero had a fight range exceeding 500 miles, letting it hit almost every United States position nearby, with rapid attacks. Even the best United States craft had no hope. Japanese fighters demolished groups of P-40 Warhawks and B-17 Flying Fortresses. American pilots frequently missed spotting the Zeros until too late. The heavens were Japan's, and by May 1942, the Philippines collapsed, handing the United States an early loss. Decades later, a Japanese officer admitted, "Our Zero fighters drove our triumphs most." In the Philippines effort, the 11th Air Fleet ran like a flawless engine, with Zeros as the driving forces. It became clear to Americans that their existing planes fell short. The United States urgently required a fresh Sky Guardian. Gaining time. Before World War II started, the United States Navy envisioned a warplane beyond any known. A piston-powered fighter exceeding 300 miles per hour, armed heavily and suited for vast ocean battles. To realize it, they approached Chance Vout, a bold aircraft company that chose the mightiest engine available, the 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp, an 18-cylinder beast with 2 rows. Using it, they built a groundbreaking device, the XF-4U1 Corsair prototype, the first United States single-engine fighter, topping 400 miles per hour. But despite its speed and strength, the Corsair had a deadly issue. It couldn't land safely. Its extended front blocked views during approaches, its wheels bounced wildly, and its wings triggered sudden drops near carrier touchdowns. For all its potential, it wasn't fit for Pacific carrier operations. Thus, American pilots managed with available gear, while designers labored relentlessly to produce a battle-worthy fighter. The Grumman F4F Wildcat stepped up to defend. With 4.50 caliber Browning guns and tanks that sealed against fire to avoid blasts, it served adequately. Yet pilots recognized it couldn't defeat the Zero. Lieutenant Commander John Thach endured restless nights, positioning matchsticks on his desk like aerial units, devising strategies to help the inferior Wildcats survive Japanese encounters until reinforcements came. One evening, Inspiration struck. The move his planes must use against a Zero. It was June 19, 1942, during the Battle of Midway's aerial combats, when Thach tested it live. Risky, but his only option. As 4 Wildcats soared, a Japanese Zero targeted Thach's partner. Rather than scattering, Thach ordered the Weave immediately. Like clockwork parts, the Wildcats crossed paths precisely, veering into one another's routes. Facing Zero took the lure, entering a snare unaware. As it aimed, Thach pivoted his Wildcat across and fired, igniting the Zero's underside. The method astonished the Japanese. Experts like Saburo Sakai, who had effortlessly pursued American fighters before, later described his group's first sight of it. 2 Wildcats attacked the leader's plane. He easily tailed an enemy, but never shot before the Grumman's ally charged from the flank. Thach Weave turned into routine for Navy and Marine units, securing vital time for Homeland engineers to unveil the game-changer, releasing Fury. By late 1942, the F4U Corsair gained combat approval. But a limitation remained. Though swift and well-armed, it still made for 200-hour farm use to pilot. From its first takeoff, all realized this fighter would secure victory, entering combat. On September 1, 1943, from the USS Independence, 2 Navy flyers, Lieutenant Dick Loesch and Ensign A.W. Nyquist, launched in fresh Grumman F6F Hellcats for their debut mission. Their prey was a Kawanishi H-8K Emily, a Japanese patrol seaplane. As the Hellcats thundered from the deck, piercing the mist with the double Wasp's deep rumble, no Japanese craft seemed beyond grasp. Ensign George Orner later said, "The Hellcat was an amazing machine, a joy to fly, like a fantasy. Compared to the F4F, it was worlds apart. We gained extra range, speed, power, everything." Loesch and Nyquist approached like predators, fixing on their mark. Bullets streaked, piercing the bulky Kawanishi. Flames erupted, and it ended swiftly. The Hellcat's initial verified kill, decisive and clean. Both returned safe, task achieved. Only 2 months on, in November 1943, the Hellcat returned to action over the Gilbert Islands during the Tarawa assault. As F6F swarms descended, they battled Japan's Season Zero pilots, but the tide shifted. The once lethal Type 97 guns barely dented the Hellcat's rugged skin. Novice American pilots tore through Japanese lines like veterans. By battle's close, 30 Zeros fell with just 1 Hellcat lost. From then, the F6F Hellcat anchored United States Navy carrier air. It was made for 200-hour farm youths to pilot. From its first takeoff, all realized this fighter would secure victory. Entering combat. On September 1, 1943, from the USS Independence, 2 Navy flyers, Lieutenant Dick Loesch and Ensign A.W. Nyquist, launched in fresh Grumman F6F Hellcats for their debut mission. Their prey was a Kawanishi HK Emily, a Japanese patrol seaplane. As the Hellcats thundered from the deck, piercing the mist with the double Wasp's deep rumble, no Japanese craft seemed beyond grasp. Ensign George Orner later said, "The Hellcat was an amazing machine, a joy to fly, like a fantasy. Compared to the F4F, it was worlds apart. We gained extra range, speed, power, everything." Loesch and Nyquist approached like predators, fixing on their mark. Bullets streaked, piercing the bulky Kawanishi. Flames erupted, and it ended swiftly. The Hellcat's initial verified kill, decisive and clean. Both returned safe, task achieved. Only 2 months on, in November 1943, the Hellcat returned to action over the Gilbert Islands during the Tarawa assault. As F6F swarms descended to battle Japan's Season Zero pilots, but the tide shifted. The once lethal Type 97 guns barely dented the Hellcat's rugged skin. Novice American pilots tore through Japanese lines like veterans. By battle's close, 30 Zeros fell, with just 1 Hellcat lost. From then, the F6F Hellcat anchored United States Navy carrier. Strength, present on every ship, and push as forces advanced island by island. Its success spread fast beyond the Pacific. Over 1,200 F6Fs reached Britain, where Royal Navy aviators flew them over Norway and the Mediterranean. There, they met Luftwaffe elites from the Blitz and Eastern Front. Even under heavy barrage the Hellcat endured. British flyers returned from missions with planes full of holes, yet airborne. One described, "Mostly gaps where the plane once was, more air passing through than around. The last mission, Lieutenant Commander Edward O'Hare was already famed when he entered a Grumman F6F Hellcat cockpit in 1943. The prior year, he became the Navy's first World War II ace, solo and low on ammo, diving into Japanese bombers endangering the USS Lexington, downing 5. Assigned to instruct novices, his fighter spirit yearned for frontline return. Now, with the Hellcat, he wielded the ideal tool. Piloting his F6F, O'Hare redefined air tactics. He taught to always check rear before ground attacks and avoid rear assaults on Becky bombers to evade 20mm blasts. But as Americans adapted, Japan altered plans. Unable to win outright, they'd evade. To slip past Hellcats, Japanese units started night torpedo strikes, hitting United States sites, then escaping undetected. America's counter was the Bat Team, 2 Hellcats guarding a radar-fitted TBF Avenger. On November 26, 1943. Maneuvers. Unlike the Zero, the N1K absorbed hits and pressed on. American pilots stared as .50 caliber shots bounced off its glass, the plane charging undeterred. It grew deadlier with the elite 343 Kokitai's use. These select aces, under renowned Minoru Genda, flew Shiden Kais, the peak N1K variant, clashing with any United States group nearing Japan. In one clash, Japanese pilots plunged Shiden Kais into 300 United States planes, battling Hellcats, Corsairs, and Avengers. Outnumbered, they persisted, dodging fire until one fixed on a Hellcat, emerging behind. A trigger pull, and the Hellcat vanished. The N1K became Japan's Hellcat slayer. Reports claimed up to 4 F6Fs downed per outing without Japanese casualties. Briefly, America's Hellcat lead seemed fading. But beneath these wins, Japan faltered in sustaining flights. Though brilliant, the N1K strained the Empire's resources. Its complex Homare engines proved unreliable from hasty builds. Only 1,500 emerged, many ruined by B-29 raids and supply failures, while America produced Hellcats non-stop. Worse, the N1K lagged at height. Against B-29 superfortresses, it climbed too slowly or low for solid defense. Japan's production couldn't compete, and America exploited this gap. Return match. With air power draining, Japan held all available planes, including outdated Zeros. By summer 1944, the Philippine Airworks Sea hosted the showdown. Over 20 carriers released more than 1,300 aircraft. Among them, upgraded Hellcats with radar and advanced coordination. In this tempest flew Lieutenant Alexander Vrachu. Post-launch, his supercharger failed, sapping power and pace. Yet Vrachu advanced, solo versus a bomber squadron. Descending from sunlight, he sliced through like a blade. 8 minutes saw 6 bombers fall, each to brief fire bursts. Battle's end cost Japan over 500 planes, 90% of its carrier force, crippling future major strikes. The enabling Hellcats returned largely intact, losses under 24. In war's final stretch, the Grumman F6F Hellcat's fury was inescapable. It ruled the Pacific, forming an unbreakable sky shield dubbed the Big Blue Blanket by Americans. Yet in late 1944, Japan mounted a final breach attempt. A frantic assault raged across the Philippines, in history's fastest sea battle. Over 200,000 sailors and flyers collided. Japan threw nearly all leftover ships and planes to stop Allied beachheads, but outclassed from the start. Since entering war, the United States trained over 17,000 new pilots, saturating the Pacific with skilled flyers. Japan scraped 5,000, many rushed and ill-equipped. Unable to rival in standard fights, Japan resorted to kamikaze. On October 25th, initial kamikaze waves raced at United States ships, aiming carriers pre-Hellcat launch. Watching foes sink, he barely evaded before flak hit his Hellcat. That outing marked among the Pacific's final Hellcat operations, as weeks later Japan yielded, ending the war. Post-war, by World War II's close, the F6F Hellcat ranked as one of America's deadliest fighters ever. It claimed 75% of Navy aerial wins. Across skies, it flew over 66,000 combat flights, downing thousands of foes while losing just 270 in duels. Despite acclaim, the Hellcat receded post-war, with jets arriving, outmoding piston craft. Some repurposed as pilotless bomb drones in early unmanned efforts, sent one way against Korean War strongholds, in the early 1950s. Others assisted United States atomic tests at Bikini Atoll. After bomb blasts, unmanned Hellcats flew into radioactive plumes with sensors and cameras to gauge effects and levels on planes. Today, few F-6Fs in the United States and United Kingdom fly, no longer battling, but honoring a Pacific legend.